Welcome back to Let's Talk Race in Ireland. I'm your host, Harrison Paul. The Royals, the real Royals, Harry and Meghan, took a trip to Lagos, Nigeria, proving just what they could have been for the royal family to reconcile the relationship between the Africans and the British people. I'm afraid we have almost let ourselves down by our inability to remind the Western world really what damage they caused to us. So we find ourselves in situations that, what I'm going to talk about today is how poorly it was reported on and the tone in which it was reported. I think the Westerners really do believe that everything has been reconciled because they gave us a visa. And yet, with that visa, we still find ourselves being ill-treated in the West and disproportionately given resources, different stuff like that. So I think we have made a huge mistake by allowing, forgiveness to come without real, I want to say apology or an apologetic energy. I think there has been a form of cover up, of let's forget about it, of, these things happen. But the more and more I even take, a deeper look into the history of things and how it shaped the world we live in today, you really get to understand that nobody really ever said sorry. And why is sorry an important thing, right? Well, sorry is an important thing because of what I'm going to get into in this video. You find that people are not really remorseful for what they did. Actually, a lot of them feel like they did Africa a favor. They brought us advancement. They brought us industrial development. And one of the great revolutionaries of our current day, his name is Patrice Lumumba, actually, but he's the new Patrice. And he says, listen, if you're giving me, I'm going to put the tape for you guys to see it.
Colonizers always want us to say that they built roads, that they brought about education, and they say all those things. But I always tell them, what is the value of poison that is sugar-coated? Ultimately, it is poison. So I'm one who is quick to say that we must look at the real picture. And the real picture is that colonization may have done certain things or during the period of colonization, education and other things, but in the ultimate, it robbed the colonized people of the most important thing that God created us to be, that is self-esteem. It killed our souls and numbed our brains. So I'm not one who is going to say that because of external things, therefore all that glitters is gold.
But basically, I'm going to paraphrase and say, if you've given me, they say they've brought things to Africa, new roads, new this, new that. But if it came with destruction, if it came with poison, really, it doesn't actually, it loses its meaning, it loses its power, it loses its gesture, right? And another part that I want to say about that is, what is our concept of development? I really am big on this since my mother put in her book, and we've never actually taken the time to understand what would development have looked like for Africa. I often think of, how we have the concept of what the world would look like. We always have those pictures of like in 2020, whatever. I remember ages ago when we were saying in 2024, there'll be flying cars, right? And you see those images of flying cars. I actually have that kind of a, perception when I think of what would have Africa been had it not been touched. And okay, maybe not flying cars, but I believe there would be a civilization that is completely contrasted and day and night that really, I want to say, is curated and it's designed for us as people, who we were, what we originally were, a civilization that is so advanced. And when we think about the Egyptians, they had a civilization there that even to this day it is a riddle. People don't understand how they built the pyramids. People don't understand how they built the Great Wall of Zimbabwe. There are a lot of sites in Africa which till this very day are still trying to be figured out. So I don't even think that we were struggling, and of course, as we know, the Greeks, or rather the Egyptians, Africans, actually brought maths to the Greeks, and I think it's called the binary or something. I forget what it's called, but basically, mathematics was proven that it actually began in Congo. So I don't worry about would we have been underdeveloped had the Westerners not have come. I just believe we would have grown in a completely different direction. And when we look at even Western world and their civilization, it's causing depression, it's causing wars, it's causing we have to think to ourselves, what is this civilization really worth, right? If it is causing so much, it destroys as much as it invents. It's polluting the world. Their companies, their multinationals pollute the world. We got the kids now who are trying to, advocate for climate change, and it just seems like whatever they created at the very same time destroys itself. So, we do have to sit and actually ask ourselves, when you think about the Africans and what we would have created, I believe we would have created things, and we were creating things that were nature friendly, that were things that would have helped the earth, that would have developed the earth. But anyway, I'm gone to a direction very too quickly. I want to take us back to why I'm talking about this. So I brought it up when we're talking about the royals, right? And Harry and Meghan could have been, the real and true reconciliation between Africa and, the UK, the Western world, Europe. But they have rejected them for that very reason. And I think it's hilarious when you think about, I say to myself, like, wow, I always think, wow, I wish Meghan was darker, so then we could really catch them out for their racism. And I said, I really feel in my spirit that God says to me, that's actually the point. The point is that they're so ridiculous that even the one drop irritates them, because it's about where the drop arrived at, right? It's where the drop found herself in the highest place of white supremacy. And that bothers them because they wanted to keep that as pure white as they could. Or I want to say dirty white, to be honest with you, because I'm not going to give anything that much of, a clean status when this is the way they are. And I always have this argument with my mother about the Queen and what her legacy was. And for me, complacency does leave you just as guilty. She definitely has a soft spot for the Queen and how much work she did and how she dedicated her life to a life of work. And, she had moments where she tried to show signs of reconciliation, but due to her loyalty to her people, she never really stood truly and transparently in a place of, on a stance of reconciliation and, apology. So for me, really, I don't really have much, want to say respect for that legacy of hers, if I'm being honest. Maybe I'm too young. But Harry and Meghan are doing it here. And really what I want to get into on this episode, I want us to discuss the way the tabloids actually wrote about this, the way the tabloids reported it on YouTube, everything. And then I want to discuss with us as Black people how we can, dissect this and begin to change the way we behave. I believe we perpetuate, we fuel people, we fuel the West and allow the white man to discuss us in this kind of way. And we've normalized him talking about us this way. What I find very interesting about this video I'm about to play for you right now is that it is an African American having an issue with how, Europeans are discussing Nigeria. You would expect a Nigerian to be, faster on the mark to retaliate to this. But actually it's an African American, which is what I'm always telling you guys. They are people who do not accept the narrative that the white man has tried to place on them. And we as Africans in diaspora, we have really let ourselves down because we've normalized them talking about us in this manner. Let's watch this.
Absurd couple pretend do their stupid, weird pretend royal tour of that African country, of that African country, of that African country.
That African country.
Nigeria is, poverty stricken.
Yes.
In a country where most people earn £1.50 a day.
I mean, Nigeria is a country that has a lot of problems, and I'm not sure many can be solved on the polo field.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, Nigeria is listed around sort of the 9th most dangerous country in the world.
Suggested that his family wouldn't be safe in Britain. Nigeria is a much more lawless country.
Now, he's gone to that country there, where it's an extremely dangerous place.
Seeker. I mean, everybody knows.
Princess.
Yeah, well, a warrior princess.
They've gone to the right place if they want to expand their cohort of fake royals, because Nigeria is flush with people who claim to be members of the royal family.
What is the basketball court going to do, Mike? What is the basketball court going to do?
Well, I mean, I guess they're going to say, well, it's going to help people use athletics to reach out from poverty and make themselves into superstars in the NBA.
It really keeps them in touch with the people when they're watching Nigerian polo too, right?
Who knew there was such a thing?
Visits are very carefully chosen. And I'll tell you this, you'll know this, Michael, you've been on enough royal tours. There's no way our royal family would set foot in Nigeria.
Well, I think Nigeria is known to be one of the most lawless countries in the world, and it's
Problems.
Dangerous
Poverty.
least safe.
it's poverty.
Poverty.
African country.
Problems.
Dangerous.
Poverty.
Least safe.
It's poverty.
Poverty.
African country.
Problems.
Dangerous.
Poverty.
Least safe.
It's poverty.
Poverty.
African country.
Wow. I've got a lot to say about this. Guys, we ought to be ashamed of ourselves. They have created a narrative about the African. And for anybody who wants to say that they may have a leg to stand on regarding corruption, regarding unsafety, my evidence that this is not I want to say them just identifying what they see, that they have nothing to do with, is because it is not a coincidence that this is the very narrative they began when they began colonizing and slavery and whatnot. The narrative was barbaric, uncivilized, everything like that. How are we in 2024 and that narrative has carried its way from that moment when they laid eyes on us? So then the only thing you are, or rather, what you are subscribing to believing is that you have always been innately more dangerous and corrupt as an African person. Because Africans today want to believe that they have nothing to do with the way Africa is at this moment in time. And they were smart enough to shift their domination from a visible one to an invisible one. And in this moment, I'm going to cue a very, very powerful conversation I had with a brother, and he's living in Nigeria, right? And he hit me up. He was like, bro, I seen this video. I think you should check it out. I'm just going to play you his voice notes because the video is quite long, but it was really, really refreshing to hear an African brother living in Nigeria and understand this about his country, because I believe we have bought in so much to, we're just stupid, man. Our leaders are just crap, man. We can't get anything done right, man. And without us knowing, we are just reiterating and parroting the very narrative he began when Cecile Rhodes said we are despicable. That's a quote. That we need to be civilized. And these people are now on the news channels in 2024 saying the exact same thing. And you think nothing is joined? It's not joined. It's the same thing. And the elephant in the room that I want my brothers and sisters to understand is that they are the cause of the destabilization. They are the cause of this. Let me cue this brother right now so you can hear this amazing conversation.
What's up, Harrison? So I just sent you a link to TikTok. It's a video I saw recently, I think like around last week or so. And it really explains how a lot of the countries that were colonized by the British, how they really, like, the name of the countries came to be. Number one, Nigeria as a whole is just a corporate entity. We, like a lot of people in Nigeria, kind of make jokes about how, you understand, Chinese come, British come, some different people from different countries come to do business in Nigeria, and they don't create jobs for the Nigerians actually living in Nigeria, you understand? So there's this whole joke about, oh, they should just sell the country already, the leaders, like, you understand, the governments, because that's what it feels like, you understand, like they're already selling the country. But the truth is, people don't already know that Nigeria has already been sold. It is owned by the British. The whole concept of Nigeria is owned and has been sold by the British for £865,000 in 1899, I think. And when you really watch this, you might like see that this is how so many countries that were colonized by the British, and let me not just say just the British, because the Portuguese, the French, Spanish, they're also involved in this. And when you now come look at America, basically if you watch this video, what they did to Nigerians is almost what they did to the Native Americans, what they did to so many other African countries that are claiming a name that was not given to them. I think we have independence, you understand, but the whole concept of independence, Nigeria got their independence in 1960. The whole concept of independence is a lie. There is no independence here. The leaders are still loyal to the colonizers because the country is still owned by the colonizers. Do you understand? The territory that was marked out to form Nigeria is what was sold and named Nigeria. And that is why there was a particular war in Nigeria called the Biafran War, where one of the tribes in Nigeria tried to branch out and create their own territory, their own state and country. When you watch this video, you understand why it was so against, like, you understand why the war even happened in the first place. Because if they did, it would change so much. And you find this video very interesting because it dives into so much information, not just in Nigeria, but about how countries colonized by the European countries, especially the British, the French, Portuguese, Spanish, why things are still happening the way they are. The ignorance of the people and the perception and the lies told and what people believe in most African countries is why they don't even understand that they are still, not even just still under rule, but they are owned. They are living, anybody born in the 1900s and above is property of the British government.
Yo, shout out to Anthony Ezra. Honestly, this guy really killed that. It's just so refreshing because we have bought into the self-hate story so much that I just hear it all the time. We've bought into it. We don't sound any different than those people on that news channel I just played you. Oh, just that. We don't. And then we fake it when we're dancing to Burna Boy and we act like we love Nigeria. No, you don't. Or we dancing to some Davido or some whatever now. Oh, I love being. No, you don't. You got to fight for your people. Your name is being dragged through the mud every single day. It's not about the fact that you like to post the flag, the face on Twitter and do the I don't know, that. No, it's not about that. We've lost the plot. We've lost the idea. There is no hope in hell the Irish are going to let you run a narrative on them without them pushing back on that narrative. But why I do have forgiveness for the African is because it didn't start today. It started hundreds, like you said, from the 1900s. Ages ago. Let me tell you something you need to understand. When it came time to transition their domination, they created things that were now called the World Organization, the World Bank, the UN, United Nations, the EU, all these organizations now, after they had split us up into tiny little countries, now we have to be up against these great nations in these world summits, right? And when you're up against these people, go and find out. No African wants to find out how big is our voice in those rooms. We are still heavily underrepresented. And those are the people who are the same friend group. So now you're going into the courtroom and the court is all friends with the people who should be being prosecuted. So how do you keep people accountable when the rules, the very rules that you have to overcome, are set by the people who were in the past oppressing you and ruling over you? If you don't believe me, go and ask Palestine how it feels. When you bring someone to the UN in order to, catch them up on their behavior, but guess what? The very people you are expecting to tell Israel that you are committing a genocide can't do that. Why? Because they are a part of the colonial regime. But we have to be the one who champions and shouts this message. Like the Palestinians push their message, we have just bought into we're corrupt and we're bad. And there's a major part here that I want to let you know. Let's say the roles were reversed. Let's say we colonized them. Let's say we were the ones who were dominating them till this very day. Do you know how corrupt these people are? I've brought some tapes here to bring for evidence. These are the most corrupt government of all time. But they're going to sit here and make you shout about your own corruption, African. Yet look how corrupt they are. Watch this. I'm going to play this woman. My mother knows her. My mother passed on, said you got to put this in today's clip. So I was like, all right, cool, I'm going to do it. I've been waiting to use this clip for a very long time. But we're going to watch this.
Never, ever in my lifetime have I seen what is patently a corrupt government like this one, where they are taking from the poor and they are giving to the already rich. Factually, we have seen yesterday there was the Public Accounts Committee put out, and nobody's reported it in mainstream media, that in the 2 years preceding Johnson becoming Prime Minister, there was an approximation of £5.5 billion of fraud and waste on government departments. In the following 2 years, when Sunak was Chancellor, that quadrupled to £21 billion of fraud, and it's not being investigated. And this report said, not that mainstream media's reported any of it at all, people wouldn't even know it existed, because they leaked it out on the day Prince Harry was in court, again using the bad news day tactic.
And another one, check this out, another one more.
We've just found out something very important. The Tories spent £3.8 billion on PPE alone through the so-called VIP lane. But now we can reveal that through that lane, they overpaid on stock by at least £925 million. We've run the numbers on an internal health department document, and the contracts signed with VIP lane companies cost an average of 80% more than those with standard NHS suppliers. Some of them were paid at even higher rates than that. For instance, the average price for a medical gown across all suppliers was £5.87p, but the gowns bought from Mellow Designs Limited, a fashion company run by a Tory donor, cost more than twice that per gown at £12.64p. To make matters even worse, more than a quarter of this VIP lane stuff was just no good. One single deal brokered by an advisor under Liz Truss wasted more than £145 million on unusable masks. We're uncovering more and more of these dodgy deals in what we call the VIP files. So please follow Good Law Project for updates, and I'll see you soon.
My brothers and sisters, these are the people you think when it came time to hand Africa back in a contract of independence, they handed it back. It is a mental illness. It is a mental illness that Africans have actually thought in their mind that when independence came time, that the thieves of all thieves and the people who did all these crooked things generally did not come up with a plan B of how they were going to operate and commence into a new phase of colonization, which we call neocolonialism. Do you know, and I said this in my last episode, books by Kwame Nkrumah called neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism, is not taught in African schools. One of the greatest men who fought for our independence, African independence, Canadian independence. Can you believe that, brothers and sisters? That is unheard of. It'd be like not reading anything by Michael Collins in an Irish history class. Who doesn't read anything about Michael Collins in the Irish history class? It's unheard of. It's impossible. If Michael Collins had left the book for everyone to read and they don't read it, they don't even skim through it, we are still teaching our children the colonial version of history in African schools. No wonder no African parent came to Europe and said, I need to teach my kid about what happened. I need to teach my kid who they're really dealing with when they come here. And that is why these people can have the nerve to sit on news channels, sit back and say, oh, the most corrupt country of all time, and look down on Harry and Meghan because they went there and said that King Charles would have never stepped foot in Nigeria. And then you guys are still waving a British flag, calling yourself British. Being African, I'm telling you right now, it comes with a mental illness, what we call a colonized mind. How do you wave a flag of a nation that has very little respect and very little remorse for what they did to you? And at the end of the day, you have a bunch of Africans who've never dedicated their lives to really study into what has happened to Africa, what is going on with Africa, the lies that are being told about Africa, and they splurt their mouths on Twitter or whatever and say, our leaders. And then some Africans say, yeah, there are no white people there. White people are not our problem. There are no white people there. Of course, no white people there. You know what? I used to have, if I wanted to make a phone call, I used to have to go to the phone and there'd be a wire there and I would have to spin it around to make a phone call. But guess what? Now there's phone calls where we can do FaceTime. Now there's phone calls where we have Bluetooth. Now there's phone calls that are phones that have all sorts of, new and updated gadgets and, characteristics to them. What does that tell you? Things evolve. People think of new ways to do things. Like my brother Anthony Ezra said, it is owned by the British. I seen another article I put on the screen. When we were crying about stop end SARS, SARS was trained by the British Army. SARS was trained by the British Army. Nobody wants to go and understand these things. Nobody wants to go and read these things. And then we parrot. So I don't sit here and get upset with, the white man when he sits on the news channel and insults us and whatever. He's doing what he does. But like I was saying in my last episode, and I'll put on the screen for you to go and check it, there is nowhere or nothing Africa should be building at the moment before we're building the minds of the African and decolonizing the mind of the African and untelling and tearing down all the lies that we've believed, that majority of our people believe about Africa. Once we do that, then you will have people running and rushing to invest their money and invest their time and invest their skills in Africa. Before you do that, to want to build with the next black man, like the Jewish community, until you have the mistrust within the black community. Of course there's mistrust. We're believing these people who sit on the news channel and say corrupt, look at them, whatever. And just because when they see you face to face, they don't say it to your face, this is the elephant in the room. Oh, you are the lucky one. Oh, you're a good Negro, like a house Negro. You're the one you've been taken out of the bad bunch of black people. But guess what? You're capable and you're civilized enough to live here in Britain. So I will treat you with respect. Why? Because you truly don't reflect what is the default for an African. And this is a narrative you have accepted, African. Without questioning, without wanting to investigate, this is the narrative you have accepted. And don't tell me it's because of today. It's the continuation. We have not moved far, my brothers and sisters. So I'll end on this, but this is all I just wanted to bring to you today and just say, please, please, we are going absolutely nowhere until we decolonize the mind of the African. Once we have done this, I promise you, you won't even have to sit around and think of how do we open black banks. Every educated person, whether it's finance, whether it's banking, whether it's lawyers, everyone will have this severe love for Africa. Understanding that we've been duped, no longer blaming itself, no longer manipulated by the abuser. And finally, I will just add it for anyone who's confused. They created rules that would assist them in neocolonialism. How do I explain that? Now, when, for example, Africa trades less with itself than it does with anyone else. Africa is forced to trade with Europe more than it trades with itself. They have created places in which they say, right, we are not going to allow this united Africa to just wake up and do its thing, how we've always dreamt for it to happen. You think no one smart enough has dreamt for it? And you think it's because our leaders are corrupt? No. Our leaders are just employees. It don't matter who go into power. Leaders are changed every day in Africa. The fact is, for as long as it's still owned by the people it was owned by, we have to get in there and deconstruct the colonial contracts that are still standing until this very day. Until we do that, my brothers and sisters, until we do that, then we will be able to, rehabilitate Africa. But listen, I say all this in my other videos. It's a lot I can add in today, and I really would love to kind of get into breaking down the world organizations and all this kind of stuff that hold us back. And I don't say hold us back in a, feeling sorry, but in a way where we need to know the enemy, right? So stay tuned, and we're gonna try and unpack this in another video. But thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe.
And I'm on a mission for you.